Hey y'all, it's Denise and I'm in my home studio, and as you can see I'm at my desk with my computers behind me because I haven't spent a lot of time painting this week. My studio session this week has been all about techie, all about computers, setting up external hard drives, moving videos back and forth, getting rid of videos, going through my archives. I have a lot of videos and a lot of outtakes that just there was no reason to hang on to them because they were just eating up storage on both my computer and my hard drive. And my computer's brand new, so it should not be getting filled up that quickly. In any case, I did come across a couple of videos that I really liked and I thought you would enjoy. I will give you a heads up. The video I'm going to show you today was an hour-and-a-half demo online that I did for the San Diego Watercolor Society last year, probably about this time last year. So the video was taped by them, edited by them, sent to me, put onto my system, and edited by me, and now I'm putting it out to you. So that's a lot of moving around, which means it's not really clear. It's not my usual HD crisp video. So if you can bear with that, I've edited that hour-and-a-half down to 25 minutes, and it has some cool little tidbits of how I put my pieces together and tips and techniques that I use that I think you might like. So therefore, I'm going to use this video this week. Next week, I will show how I finished this piece off once I was done doing the demo for the Watercolor Society. And I'll show that next week, and that's a lot cleaner and crisper. And I just didn't want to bundle it all together because it makes for a very long video this week. And I know we're all busy. We don't have time to sit down and watch an hour-and-a-half of a video. So, all that being said, I'm really happy that you're here. I'm really happy that you stick around with me and show up on Saturdays when I do for my latest studio session. And yeah, I love that. So thanks so much. And let's let this one roll, and I'll see you again next week. Bye. Table. I'm starting out with a canvas that I've already covered with papers. I oftentimes keep canvases or boards nearby. I call them my wingman. And when I have extra papers, they go on. When I have extra paint on my palette, it goes on. And I lay it out, and eventually it will become a painting. So when the time comes, I can kind of turn them and decide what I'm going to make, or what it's going to be. And I knew that this one was going to be a floral. I don't always do florals, but it's really an easy thing for me to do when I'm doing a demo because they just kind of come secondhand to me. So I don't have to rethink and reinvent the wheel while I'm intuitively trying to work along. One thing I do is I actually do make color charts and figure out a color palette before I start. It makes my life so much easier to have my paint all lined up and my papers lined up. From there, it's a free-for-all, but at least I have a good start. And on this one, I'm starting with a red oxide and a turquoise blue. And from those two colors, and I know many of you have probably done a complementary color chart, I can mix all these colors and more from those two. So I don't have to spend a lot of time and money going out and buying paints that are my perfect color. I can kind of figure out where I want to go from picking two. So that being said, I'm going to show you a couple of things that I have. The colors that I'm choosing are the turquoise. I have red oxide and raw sienna. And I have as my neutrals, I like to use an unbleached titanium, black, which I don't use a lot of because I like to make my own, and a raw umber. So as far as papers, it might be a page out of a book that I just paint over. I do like to get bits and pieces of fabric in. Most of my papers, I will make many of them myself. This is actually papers that I've made when I'm cleaning off the brayer from my jelly print plate. If anybody's ever used a jelly plate, you know you have to clean your brayer off. those papers become really perfect to add into my work. Sometimes I use old palettes. Once I'm done with a palette, I just smear the paint over it, and it's on tissue paper, on tracing paper, so it makes great mixed media papers. So that is a few of my papers. Another one that I've been doing lately that I really love is the paper that you get at Home Depot. I'm a big fan of the Home Depot paint store. This is a painter's paper that they lay around the border of a room as they're painting. But I roll this out, and I'll take a couple hours and roll a bunch out and just swipe paint colors on it. Because I like the texture, I like the effects I get with painted paper. I know it kind of seems like, well, you could just paint on the canvas, but this just gives it another feel that I really like, the torn paper. So I use that painter's paper from Home Depot a lot to make my papers. So I've got my papers figured out. I also want to show one other kind of fun little tip. I've got my turquoise, my red oxide, my neutrals, and then I've picked a couple little colors just to spice it up a little bit. So I'll be using the light olive green and an alizarin crimson. So those are going to be my little accent colors. But another tip that I really love to do, when I do buy a handmade paper, I always buy it in a neutral color, because I can go over that paper with paint and make it my own. I don't have to go and buy, and I know that this will be archival because I'm using archival paints to do it. I'm not adding papers to my work that, you know, I've torn out of somewhere and I'm not really sure if the colors are going to fade or not. So these papers were all made from this one neutral and just brushing paint on them. And the beautiful thing is, if they have a metallic design in them, that metallic design pops right through. The paint doesn't take on that. So those will be my little accent papers. Okay. So I do, as I said, I love to layer. Let me be honest. Let me come clean here. I am not a purist. When it comes to light colors, I will literally go to Home Depot and buy the little sample oops paint of white or any light color, because it's 50 cents for a jar and it goes a long way and it's got a beautiful consistency. I don't use Liquitex exclusively. As a matter of fact, these are mostly student grade paints, but I do love the facade. I love how they feel when they go on. It's not a heavy body. It's not a liquid. It's just got a really nice feel to it. So, and then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start out with my student grades and I'll come back over with my golden paints. So I don't really stick to one brand of paint. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on this canvas, I've got a little bit of everything. I've got some Chinese papers. I've got chunks of a wallpaper I made from way back in my faux finish days. And I still have that hanging around, which was made with a Venetian plaster. I have joint compound. I've got a stamp over here. I just kind of added a little bit of everything. Now, how is that going to be a floral? I'm going to start by adding a coat of paint over this to kind of mute it out a little bit, to tone it down. And make it so everything's not so contrasty. Let me take a piece of paper towel. And you also kind of pick up some fun little effects when you do that, things that might come in handy later. Now, once I've done that, now I've muted it out. Let me put a little bit more because I'm what I see on the screen and what I see in front of me might be two different things. And once I've done that, I'll come back with a damp and kind of bring back a few things that I like. I like that wallpaper. I like some of that corrugated cardboard. Now these things might disappear again, but for now, I think I might like to keep those. And I think that's probably about all I need. Maybe a little bit of that Chinese writing. Okay, so I softened that up a little bit. I do like to come in and add some writing. It could be any kind of mark that I'm doing. I could just make marks, and I'm using a pencil here. What I usually use is my very favorite tool in my toolbox is my Stabilo pencil. I love my Stabilo pencil. So I could write anything. It might be about today. It's more that I just want to get a mark on there. Nothing is precious right now. I'm just adding layers because to me, that's adding history to the piece. And I really like that. That's what I look for in a painting. Now, I use the Stabilo pencil. So if you've used those before, you know that it's a water-soluble pencil. So I kind of want to seal that in a little bit. And again, not too worried with how it's looking right now, because I know this is going to be just a layer. And right here, I'm using in my little container as my gel medium, I actually use a polyacrylic, also from the Home Depot. I really like how liquid it is. And believe it or not, this is going to turn out to be a floral that you might even like, as messy as it's looking right now. Okay, now I just wanted to seal that Stabilo pencil in so it's not running all over it. When I go to do other things, I don't want that color running. Let me damp some of that up. Now I'm going to take this point, while I'm letting that set up a little bit, and I'm going to add some more papers to indicate flowers. And I like to tear my papers. I like the torn edge. I can come back and paint that in. It'll all make sense. Let's put that. That's kind of a dark flower, but I want to take my medium. And when you're laying your papers down, for anybody who hasn't done it before, you know you're going to get little ripples. And let me see if I can find my bowl scraper. You're going to get it to buckle. It will buckle and it will ripple. So you kind of have to keep your eye on it. And I pull it up, and I love this little bowl scraper off of Amazon. I think it's probably a $7 item, but it really helps you get your papers laid down. And that's really important, to get your papers laid down smoothly, because if not, it compromises your painting. If the paper is not touching down to your canvas, you have a spot where the paper can tear. You don't want that to happen. So, and it's also important, you go back and you take another look as you're moving along and laying other papers down. We like to call that babysitting your papers until you're confident that they're all laying down smoothly. And it also helps you save your medium, because I'm able to save a lot of my medium with this scraper and put it back in the container. Okay, now this is going to make sense in a couple more steps. It's not looking so floral yet. Now I'm going to take some of the lighter color. And I think the hardest thing to remember is to not make everything the same size. I'm just kind of looking at it as I go to make sure that composition-wise, everything is laying out. I like it when my flowers are expansive and going off the canvas instead of controlling them all within those borders. So let's get these guys on. And if you're using papers that have a heavier, that are a heavier paper, you might want to use a gel medium that will help them lay down better. Sometimes the liquid mediums are just not strong enough to do that. This is my water-based polyurethane that I use to lay my papers down. It's also what I use to top coat my pieces. It's water-based, it's non-yellowing, and you can see this can I happened to get on sale for $9 at Home Depot because they discontinued it. But this is only $15 for a quart, as opposed to this, which might be $28 for 8 ounces or 16 ounces. So to me, it's, and I love working with this. And that may go back to my years of being a faux finish painter and painting furniture. This is what I always use for my top coats, and it works great on my art as well. So that's what I use to lay my papers down. Okay, so now I've got papers laid down, and it probably looks like, oh my gosh, it looks so messy. That does look pretty darn messy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Stabilo and I'm going to find my design in here. I've got my flowers and I do a really loose sketch around what I want to really be important, which will then get refined even more when I start to do my negative painting around. And I do like to use the black Stabilo because I like a little bit of black in my work. Now, where's my vase? Right now, I think I will make it be right here. I think that is where I'm going to make my vase. Now, this will all start to come clear to you when I start adding some paint. Got my palette and I use the blue paper towel that I get wet and lay tracing paper on it. It keeps my acrylic paints wet. And I think I'm going to start, actually, you know what I want to do? I'm going to start with a dark color. And I'm going to lay down a really transparent, let me see, I'm going to take my teal blue and I'm going to mix raw umber in it. Come on. And I'm using glazing medium to make it transparent. Let me grab my brush again. I'm going to mix this up. And like I said, I like to start with a lot of layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around that area that I just drew want a little bit more transparent because I don't want to lose everything that I have underneath, but I want to find my design. So I've got a flower there, and I don't like to paint in the stems of my flowers. What I do is I paint around them and let them show up on their own. Now, just so you know, the background of this painting is probably going to be more white than anything. So, but what will be nice is to have all this dark peeking through around the edges. Also paint around the writing. Some of it can show up. No one's really going to know what that writing said. Even I won't, but it adds a nice little element of design. Now let's see what kind of changes I can make here. This is my tabletop. I do like, for my own personal taste, I like lines in my work, just scribbly little lines. And by scribbly, I mean, I don't lay a ruler down and draw straight lines. I just kind of find them within and lay them out because I personally like that in my art. Now my tabletop, so now I know where my tabletop is. It's uneven, but it's more of an abstract piece. And I also think I want to change this vase. Maybe I want to give this a little fluted bottom while I'm waiting for everything else to dry. So let's grab this, change this shape of the vase. Now I'm going to go back over and make some little scribbly indications of my flowers. I could be doing this with a different color, a different tool. But as I said, I do like black in my work. I think it adds a definition and a little bit of sophistication. And I'm liking where that's going. So what else can I add to this while I'm waiting for this to dry? Now I've got these colors, they look very pretty together, but I need a little punch with it. So I was thinking that would be fun. And this is just a book that I've painted, just run paint over it. And I am going to put maybe a couple pieces of fruit in here. That is now a limeish thing. Now this could easily be done with a piece of hand painted paper. I just think it's interesting to have that little bit of text in there. And sometimes when you're lucky enough, that text will actually say something that adds to the piece. Now, as you put the coats on, as you move along, they get more interesting because you have a lot more underneath to pop up. I love the way that this blue is coming around that flower. And I'm painting around that stem to let the stem show up. Now, I love it. And the more layers I paint on, the more I get textures to, you know, that kind of support the background. But meanwhile, I'm knocking it back and bringing it forward actually so my flowers pop out more. This is just really pretty. So what to do about that? And these are actually the kind of things I think about as I'm painting, as I'm sure we all do, because every little stroke you put down, it makes you think about what is the next thing I need to do to make that work. Because it's always, as I say, an intuitive thing. You put down a layer and you stand back and go, you know what? I think I need to go in this direction. And it's all the call and response. It's what are you going to do with the last thing you did? If that's helpful, and I know that many of you understand that. I don't always finish a painting before I go on to the next. I have a lot of halfway there, almost there. You're like 2 brush strokes away from being there. And I love that because it really is important to be able to shift back and forth. If I'm looking at one piece for too long, I'll either overwork it or get frustrated with it. So I very oftentimes have several pieces going at once. And a lot of times what I'll do, and I have to wait until this is dry enough, is I'll go back with my oil pastels, which kind of is a tricky thing to do when you're working with water base. And I will add a little touch of brightness. Let me see, what do I got here? And just scribble in some highlights. Now, when you do this, you have to be very careful what you, because I'm doing this way before the time I should be doing it, but I wanted to give you a couple more little things I like to add in. When you do use the oil pastels, you know, oil pastels never really dry. So I need to, before I go on to finish this piece off, this is usually one of the last things I add in. And I want to make sure I hit them with a workable fixative or a spray for oil pastels before I seal the painting, so that they don't end up, you know, I mean, it'll smudge, and we don't want that. So I will use these little oil pastels a lot for finishing pieces off. Okay, I hope that wasn't too painful to sit through. I know in this day and age, clarity and HD mean everything. I promise next week will be much better and much clearer, and I just want you to know I love showing up here. I love showing you what's going on in my studio during the week. And in return, I would love it if you hit the thumbs up and subscribe. It really helps me, and it keeps me showing up to share what I got going on. So thanks for being here, and I will see you next week.